Okay, you can now go ahead. Thanks, Louise.
Well, hi everybody, and thank you for having me, as usual, Linda, and thanks to everybody else. A lot of the stuff I was going to mention has been covered, of course, but I'll probably retouch on it. But I was going to focus on Eris because she's one of my favorite things to study at the moment. So as far as I'm concerned, this period we're in of chaos is almost like a perfect storm right now. We're moving into a new astrological age of Aquarius, and then we have all these newly discovered dwarf planets as well. And as we know from the discoveries of Pluto, Neptune, Uranus, once these planets are discovered, their influence tends to come into our consciousness, and their effects come in. Now, we have, I agree with, so much that's been said about the lessons, so I'm not going to focus so much on that. A lot of people have talked about that. I agree with Chad and with Ryan that, we're being taught that that we are not separate anymore, and that we have to remember our connection. I talk about this all the time with my clients, and that we are our what's the illusion of control, I think, of having dominion over the earth is being shattered completely. And there's so many pieces to the astrology at the moment. Erin's talked about Venus and Neptune, and various other people have talked about, it's obviously a Saturn-Pluto event, without a doubt. But I want to talk more about Eris. Okay. Eris was discovered in 2005, and she's generally portrayed as a very, very vicious, angry kind of being. And yes, she has this very kind of angry side to her, and as a planet or dwarf planet, I believe she does too. But she gets blamed for starting the Trojan War, but she actually just threw the apple into the party of the elites. That
angry.
Sorry?
She wanted to go to the wedding and she wasn't invited.
Exactly what I was going to say, Erin. She was revealing the elites,
exactly.
outcasts. And I see Eris more as a raging outcast. She has been kept out. She's been portrayed as ugly, and she, to me, represents all that's been kind of kept out by our society, by our patriarchal society. Now, we have 5 exact squares from Pluto to Eris. The first one was on January the 26th at 23 degrees of Capricorn Pluto to 23 Aries. We have 4 more, one on June the 14th, one on December the 10th, and then in 2021 we have one on August the 27th and one on October the 8th. Now, I believe that Eris, because she represents chaos, discord, and general ripping down the facade, and Pluto, of course, has been pulling down our institutions already as well. We have all that. I think we're in for 18 months of complete chaos with this virus. I don't like to be the bearer of bad news, but I really think we have to accept we're in it for the long haul, really. That's not to say it's going to be, consistently getting worse. In my opinion, we'll have peaks and ebbs and flows. Mars is related to it too. We've just had Mars squaring Eris and Mars conjunct Pluto, and then Mars is going to come around and conjunct Eris. I've forgotten the exact date, but sometime this year. I think this year is quite honestly going to be rough, but I do see a lot of kind of good happening and underneath it as Eris kind of rips off you know, the facade of the society that we live in, the world that we live in, the unfettered capitalism, all that kind of stuff. Yes, Venus, Uranus revealing vanities as well, but also Eris reveals the vanities of the individual in Aries. She's revealing that, you know, we have always been me, 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 and then suddenly we're being asked to be we, and come together, and communities are coming together. With the explosion of this virus, you know, there's a gazillion groups set up for information for local communities on Facebook. People are starting, you know, offering to go and get groceries for the elderly and do all these things. People are really stepping up. So whilst you know, it's kind of, you know, it's a bit frightening, but we have to look for where the good is and where people are coming together and where people are choosing to follow the guidelines of physical separation, not social separation, because I feel very social still. Just for the good of others. I love the thing that we're being told to, you know, act as if you have the virus rather than act as if you're going to get it. So you're protecting the community rather than the whole. Other things I see happening through all of this is that Eris at 23 degrees when she started this, and she's very slow moving. And the first two squares, I think it's the first and the third square are at 23 degrees. Now, Eris, according to, there's a religion that worship her. They say her number is 23. Interestingly, 23 is very related to the human body. It's the number of digits. We have 10 fingers, 10 toes, 2 ears and a nose. That's 23. We also have 23 pairs of chromosomes in the human body. Normal physical biorhythm for human beings is 23 days. Number of articulations in the human arm is 23. And the circulation of blood through all the human body takes 23 seconds. And then we're getting reports that people with coronavirus or COVID-19, well, the virus is coronavirus, are losing their taste and smell. It's almost like we're actually physically being shifted and changed so that we learn to go within and to really change. So I find that really interesting as well. But, you know, I don't have loads to say about it because I knew a lot of what I wanted to say would have been covered by the other people. But I do believe that Eris has a really big part in it, and that the overall message of what we're going through and the evolutionary purpose of it is for us to move from this total me, 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 me world into this we world. And, you know, that could potentially move to, you know, borders completely breaking down and none of this protectionism that we have now, and this, you know, we've got to put our country first and that kind of language. I think that may be ultimately on the way out, or I hope so. So that's it from me. Thanks.
Hi, Louise. I had a question.
Yeah.
Could Eris be, especially since she's in Aries, but it almost kind of seems like Eris by herself might be the underdog. And the reason I'm thinking of that is because of our the lowest employees are now being asked to step in, you know, they're in the limelight, putting their lives, you know, on the line, when before, you know, they were kind of looked at as like, well, why don't you go get a college degree, or why don't you go start a business and all of that?
Absolutely, Wanda. Yeah, I completely agree. You know, they're not part of the elite, you know, moneyed classes, but suddenly we're realizing how important they are. So when I say outcast, I kind of mean those that have been shunned by the, you know, the class society that we live in. So classism is is being broken down, really. I hope, I believe. So yeah, I think definitely. Mm-hmm. Did that answer your question?
Yes, it did. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Louise at Edington. And our next speaker is Ari Moshe Wolfe. Please go ahead, Ari.
All right. Hello, everyone. Good to be with you all. So I want to give a little bit of attention to Uranus and to frame this particular time that we're in from the perspective of what's actually unfolding over a longer period of time. When China was first sort of realizing the reality of COVID-19, that was when Uranus actually just began moving direct in Taurus. And since then, Saturn's moved into Aquarius, and we've kind of reached the apex of, it's all over the world now. The whole world is dealing with it. But I think it's meaningful to note that Saturn stationing retrograde is going to go back into Capricorn soon. So I just wanted to start by sharing a couple charts with you, and then I'll give my thoughts on it. So I'm on my phone. It's my first time sharing charts on the phone, so done.
Oh.
Can you see this chart?
Hi, yeah.
Okay, there we go. It's kind of sideways for me, but it's December 23rd. Oh, that's my daughter's birthday, 2021. And I give this chart because this is, when both Saturn and Uranus will be at 11 degrees, Aquarius, Taurus. And this is like the last official square. So until the end of 2021, Saturn and Uranus are still going to actually meet each other 3 times in the fixed signs. And what's actually even more significant, take a look at this next screen.
Oh.
This is 1 year later in October of 2022. Now, Saturn and Uranus don't square each other 4 times. That would be highly unusual, but they get really close. At this time, if you look at in this chart, it's in the 11th house. Saturn in Aquarius is stationing direct. It's at retrograde, but it's about to go direct at 18 degrees Aquarius. And Taurus, Uranus in Taurus is at 18 degrees Taurus, freshly moving direct. So the square of Uranus and Taurus is sort of just starting now, but all the way until October 2022, like 2.5 years, right? At 2.5 years, they're going to be squaring each other and get as close as about half a degree from each other. So to frame what's happening right now is like they're touching base. And we're going to see sort of a break from that. I'm not predicting what that will symbolize phenomenally in the world. But this energy that we're seeing a snapshot of is really going to get started later in this year and last for a good solid years. After that final almost square in October of 2022, Saturn heads straight to Pisces and doesn't return. So the entire time, pretty much like, roughly 85-90% of the time that Saturn is in Aquarius, it's squaring Uranus. And not just squaring, but squaring it tightly. When we look at Saturn in Aquarius relative to its square with Uranus, of course, we're looking at a great calling to introspect Saturn, think, really self-reflection.
Ari.
What's that? Hello?
To move your phone around a bit because at the moment you're almost upside down.
Oh, am I upside down, eh?
Not upside down, but on the side. That's better.
How about now?
Let's have a look.
Is that better?
Yeah, that's much better. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. It really asks us to become introspective and reflective upon how we're living, how we're structuring our life. And I think one of the elements that comes with Aquarius and Uranus, we often hear that it's associated with shocks and surprises and traumas. And the reason for that predominantly is because our conditioned consciousness, meaning what we're expecting, the routes of familiarity and behavior that we have conditioned inside of ourselves, inside of our minds, doesn't accommodate to apprehend the larger ecosystem of interconnectedness that reflects the mind of creator, actually how life is, how it's actually designed. And so one of the issues with Saturn in Aquarius, especially with the square with Uranus, are limiting and old ways of thinking that create exclusion. And that's what Aquarius is about. Aquarius and Uranus correspond in the shadow to exclusion. Like, this is my group of people, this is my team, or this is my life, or this is my social class. And if we live in a way where we just sort of accept that the resources that we have are just what's always going to be, and some people have them, some people don't have them, evolutionary process comes in, and Uranus and Taurus says, well, how about not having those resources? You know, we have so many people that aren't making money right now because they're not in a job. So this requires that we get out of our conditioning and start to think a little more intelligently. And the good thing about Saturn is that Saturn always says there is constructive, practical, useful work to do. And this is great to have Saturn in Aquarius during this very Uranian time, because Uranian doesn't really operate on the level of how do I consciously deal with this? It's actually just asking us to liberate, let go of the known, let go of the conditioning, and to become more of an observer. And if we're looking at reality with a lot of preconditions and preferences and assumptions and expectations, we're not going to be able to really grow and expand to encompass the needs for survival that this planet really requires. And I think the attitude that is most helpful and most in alignment with life is an attitude of cooperation, of inclusion, because that's what life is. Everything, if you think of Uranus Aquarius as symbolizing the mind of God, these are all archetypal energies that are manifesting creation, and they're all here. There's no disharmony in this one reality. It's one ecosystem, and all these elements are created and exactly what they are meant to be. And so the more we allow our thinking to resonate with, there must be a way of living where you getting your needs met resonates with my getting my needs met. Uranus and Taurus squaring Saturn, we have to thus rethink the capitalistic system and internally, psychologically, the ways that we're used to living. And I think it's hilarious, the whole toilet paper thing, because that really represents not just the consumerism and the fear. And of course, I don't want to shame anyone, because there are people, you know, children, people who have families of many kids, and there's a concern, you know, and people are afraid. But the fact that we use toilet paper, it's a thing you buy and you expect to have it, it's almost just like reflecting back to us how dependent we are upon a system that at its core doesn't thrive and exist in this consciousness of inclusion and support and community and togetherness. And if we're willing, if we're open to, we can really come up with amazing solutions during this time. And I like to say that the solutions and the perspectives and the insights that arise, they come from the open mind. I gave an analogy recently in one of my videos that there's a teaching that family brings a lot of thriving, because in a family system, we have all these different individualities, all these different pieces. And if we have an open mind that says, okay, there's a way for all of us to be supported, then we can create a way of living that allows for more diversity and creativity and possibilities that wouldn't have otherwise existed if it was just everyone's the same with the same needs. So you got 5 people in the kitchen, one is gluten-free, one is paleo, you know, one is doing a juice cleanse, and all these different types of diets. And to be able to say, there is space for all of us here. And not one of us is more important than the other. Not one of us is causing any problems for anyone else. There's this reflection in our minds that can reflect the spaciousness and the diversity and the obviously interesting and quite surprising reality of life that is never what we expect it to be. And it's not always traumatizing and challenging. Sometimes life is just full on, like, oh, pleasantly surprised. This is working out quite well, and I could have never figured it out on my own. It's because our conditioned mind, our conditioned thinking can't figure it out on its own. So that's my prayer, my blessing for us during this time, to begin to cultivate a greater mentality of inclusion and adaptability. And thus, what's implied in that is curiosity for how can the perceived challenges that we're experiencing right now, what is that inviting? What is that opening in terms of potential for greater thriving and togetherness and wellness for all of us? I really wish this for all of us, because that's the only way forward. And we're just getting started.
Thank you so much. Any comments or questions? Okay, thank you very much, Ari. And,
Thank you.
thank you. Our next speaker is Sara Christensen. Please go ahead, Sarah.
Thank you, Linda. Thank you, everyone. I'm glad to participate in this exchange on the current situation that we're all working through and managing through in varying degrees of where we are living. And every nation, every community has a different way that things that they're dealing with, depending on what's going on in their particular community. Before I jump into the astrology little parts that I am going to share in this exchange, I wanted to read from two different things, because I think as the months and weeks go by in this year, there's something that
Can I eat the rest of your greens?
Can you hear me okay?
Or did you want any more?
Can you hear me okay? Sorry?
Yes, go ahead. Sorry, someone was unmuted then, and you're okay to go now.
Okay. Okay, so I'm going to read. This is from a little book. It's called the Zen Poems. So I just want to bring our consciousness just for a moment to just the present moment, because in the present moment and in the coming weeks, we're going to be dealing with grief. And we're going to be managing kind of how that comes up for us on a day-by-day basis. And for those who we know may fall ill, or we're concerned may fall ill. So I wanted to read this. This is a very brief poem from it notes on page 162, in China, sick with malaria fever. Similar theme, but I want you to listen to what this individual shared in their poem. Every nasty bug has schemed to plague me with disease. The twin gods of illness bore holes in my chest and diaphragm. He's old, why not kill him off? Send vermin of darkness to release their poisonous venom. The suffocating heat of my body has steamed my vitality away. I quake as though struck by thunder. Heaven and earth have become a gigantic two-part steamer, and all the gravy pours out of me. But suddenly comes a chill to chase away the heat, and I shiver as though drowning under ice. Pile up more blankets over coverlets and quilts. No end to the number I can take. Why in such a brief span of time do yin and yang alternate so violently? I cough and I sneeze, tears running, mixed with phlegm, toss and turn, but can't find peace. No matter how I rearrange pillow and mattress. I have trouble whether I'm up or down. For the slightest movement, someone must support me. So dizzy, I confuse, square and round, fall over all the time, go black and blank out. All my life, I've eaten a vegetarian diet, and it's always suited my taste just fine. So the 5-hole mullet that they've set before me now tastes about as appetizing as frozen quinine bark. In the short, while I've been confined to this hammock, my scrawny body is turned to jerky. People passing by, look in, wondering if I'm not dead and just pretending to be alive. All day groans issue from my mouth. Whatever comes brings anger or terror. Returning to consciousness, I compose myself. A visitor from far across the seas. No one knows my mind or has pity for a strange accent. I wanted to bring our conscious just there for just a minute, because we can jump all over and around into the technical bits and pieces, and we forget our feeling nature sometimes. And I just wanted to kind of bring it there for a minute, because there will be many more people that we know that we would be concerned about, not just our own families, but friends that are afar and friends that are in this community. And just wanted to bring that, because if we forget that part of our humanity, not to take a minute or several minutes, if not several moments, maybe weeks, to consider the dwelling grief, or when it comes in waves, that we need to keep that in mind. So I am a mother, so everything I do right now is focused into what my family needs, what my daughter needs from me day to day. So my focus is primarily there, and then I have to move between the archetype of the Cancer, the North Node, and the South Node in Capricorn. So that I'm absolutely feeling that quite a bit right these days. And I have a 13-year-old who's a 7th grader who's conscious enough to know what's going on, but also has to deal day to day with kind of the unknowns. And the closest thing I have to compare to the present moment is how we managed through 9/11 as a collective and as an individual, and the grief that came with that. This is different, and we're still battling something. We're battling something that we can't see very well, and how we are behaving. Now, astrology, I actually took some time a couple of days ago, when I have my quiet moments, late in the evening when everyone is in bed, is where I find my peaceful respite from everything going on during the day, and all the meals I'm cooking now in extra, keeping everybody well fed and happy, and exercising where I can. So there, I always look at it from the standpoint of the ways that astrology can help you during a crisis. So if you're a beginner into astrology, this little bit's for you. So knowing your birth chart from the evolutionary perspective helps you know your biggest growth area. You're going to know what challenges you the most, and that may become front and center for you for now and for the rest of this year and into next year, as Ari had shared in his sharing about how this kind of exchange between Saturn and the Uranus square will be pushing on those, on our consciousness and our, how we've been conditioned. So that's up for review. And everyone has strengths and everyone has weaknesses. And often in a crisis, the things we consider are our sources of income. That's part of our survival, our work. That maybe our work, maybe our work is taking off because we're needed for the service that we offer, or the thing that we do, because that's the critical thing in the community. So the planets ruling the second house, if you're going down to the very basic, who's the ruler of your second house, and how is it in the mix this year, or in your solar return, in the transits? That will give you some insights about your income and how it's part of this equation of what's going on right now. So you do have that to look to for this year. And you can do it each year as well, because we kind of get a piece, but we're all participating. As Chad had said, we're all participating. So there's different things that we are releasing in our conditioning, but also what prepares us for this moment. We were born for this moment as well. So it's kind of keeping that in mind. So it's always important to always consider the larger cycles. So Saturn, of course, paying attention to that. The outer planets as well. We've been tuning into all of the Saturn-Pluto conjunction, but that is such an enormous cycle that's just beginning. It's just the beginning, and because Saturn is involved, it takes time to really see what that's all about. So patience is in order, a lot of it. Neptune is in Pisces, and really Neptune in Pisces, we're seeing creativity go off the charts with some people. This is the fun part of that part, that we're having to stay at home, but at the same time we get to be creative, depending on our workload if we're working virtual. So that's kind of something to take into consideration as well. The second thing that we can take a look at, especially if we're in a relationship that we are supporting someone else or we're co-supporting each other, is partner resources. And that's the 8th house. That's your 8th house in your chart. And so it's helpful to see what's going on with your 8th house, because your partner may be the key person for how you are supported during a crisis. And so that helps you look at just your soul's evolution. Maybe your soul's evolution is really targeted for how you are in relationships, how you problem solve, how you cooperate, and times of stress, how you work with that, right? And how you build trust. One of the biggest things with relationship in the evolutionary is trust. How are you with trust? And this is turning that up in a big way. So your partner, very important in that supporting factor, and your 8th house, the 8th house ruler. How is that planet doing this year? Is it part of this mix in the Capricorn? Is that ruler in the Capricorn mix? So you got to kind of take a look at that, and that'll give you some insights about what's maybe spiritual muscle building, or what's going to be your limit. Knowing the days of your planets on certain subjects will help you kind of navigate. It's better for me to really even isolate from my family today. So those kinds of things you can kind of keep your eye on. So there's the 8th house, the planet Mars. The planet Mars, use of your free will. We get to choose if we're going to, how much exercise is really dependent in what location you are, how much you can do, but you can dance around inside your house with your cat or with your dog or with yourself in front of the, in front of the slider door at night. All of these things to keep your body moving, that's important. But Mars is also just helpful for how much courage you have to kind of bring to the table, and also your discerning, choices, your critical thinking in everyday matters, and especially if you're a parent, you have to use a filter for how much your kids can absorb. That's really important. Let's talk about your helpers. When there's a crisis, astrology helps you see who your helpers are as well. Your helpers are Jupiter. Thank you. I'll wrap this up. So your helpers are Jupiter, Venus, maybe possibly Mercury, because your friends and allies are important to you in your mental wellness and how you stay connected virtually, and checking in on them. So knowing who your friends are. The Jupiter, the helper in that way, you might have neighbors that come in to help that turn out you're learning a lot more now than you have in the past. So that's how I want to wrap it up today. I want to thank everybody for the sharing today, and I hope this helps you in understanding how astrology can help you during a time of crisis. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Sarah. Let's hear now from Sue Hillyard. Go ahead, Sue.
Thank you, Linda. Thank you, Sarah, and everybody else. This is just awesome. I wasn't sure that I really had anything to contribute to this at first, but then I started looking at the graphs of what was going on and the statistics, and I kind of became a little alarmed. This is a graph that shows the world coronavirus stats as of March 22nd, just a few days ago. The total cases at that point were over 400,000, with deaths just under 20,000. And you can see that the number of cases had begun to rise pretty steeply. And here we are yesterday, the cases were approaching 500,000 and the deaths more than 22,000. And as of today, and this was earlier today, we're over 500,000 cases and approaching 24,000 deaths worldwide. This is a really big deal. And as you can see, the US stats also have started increasing logarithmically, with number of cases doubling every 3 to 4 days. Today, we passed Italy in number of new cases. So then I started looking at the astrology. And as always, I have lots of arrows and, and complicated, lots of stuff on here. But this is a snapshot in time as the pandemic escalates of the recent new moon in Aries just a couple of days ago. We're halfway between eclipses. The new moon on March 24th was conjunct Chiron and Black Moon Lilith and square the nodes, indicating a health crisis. And the astrological story gets interesting when we add in including Pan, Pandora, and Panacea, which all have the same root as pandemic, along with a number of asteroids, including Hygeia, Atlantis, Chaos, and Lucifer. Among other things, Atlantis signifies hubris, which speaks to the initial reaction. Pan is square Neptune, indicating the elusive nature of identifying the disease and confusion surrounding the response. These asteroids are all in Gemini, which rules the lungs. Then opposite them in Sagittarius, we have Isis, Hecate, Demosthene, Hybris, which also speaks of hubris, Lilith, Osiris, and Horus. The new moon eclipse in this past December on Christmas Day, from many of us at 4 degrees Capricorn, was conjunct the South Node. And the new moon eclipse in June 20th, will be conjunct the North Node, which will have just moved into Gemini. The nodes will just have moved into Gemini and Sagittarius. What I find interesting was that both sides of this opposition are enclosed by mythical figures that are related. In Gemini, we have Asclepia with Pan, Pandora, and Panacea, and Hygeia. And on the other side, in Sagittarius, are Isis, Osiris, and Horus, flanking Mnemosyne, which is memory, Lilith, and Hecate, leading us through the dark. Asclepia is a symbol of resurrection, revival, and a miraculous comeback. This quote from jessicaadams.com, Asclepia, as we've seen, was the miracle worker who could save you from the plague or pull you back from a point of no return. His daughter Hygeia, found in the year that they made breakthroughs with cholera, is about prevention, not cure. And we get the word hygiene from her. Her sister Panacea is about remedies, cures, and solutions with an ethical or moral component. So what I think is that we're all in this together, but we have a little bit of help from the goddesses, the gods and goddesses. What do you guys think?
I think so, if we pay attention.
I agree. If we pay attention and we listen to this social distancing, I think is a big part of it. especially, you know, with Saturn going into Aquarius. Just as we were all told to shelter in place. That's about what I've got.
Okay, terrific. Thank you so much, Sue. Fantastic. Next,
Thank you.
hearing from Nura Rachelle. Please go ahead.
Hi, everyone. I just want to say, first and foremost, how amazing it is that we have groups like this to be able to come together and talk about these things. I really feel that that's actually one of the biggest shifts that's happening collectively with Saturn in Aquarius, and then Jupiter joining in December, and then Pluto in 2024. I agree with a lot of what everybody is saying about a lot of the astrology. So in taking some notes, I just wanted to focus on a couple things that have been particularly interesting in watching what's going on socially and collectively, because that is what Aquarius is all about. And also wanted to bring attention to how in evolutionary astrology, we're always working with this spectrum of consciousness and how everybody is going to navigate and engage with the archetypes. So for one, you know, if we're talking about some of the shadow and some of the challenge of Aquarius, well, that could be exclusion, alienation, being outcast, something about the group not working for everybody. And then you can think of, you know, if we're not all free, then nobody's free. And you could insert any word instead of free in that blank. You know, if we're not all, you know, being supported by the system, then the system is not working, right? And that's that Aquarian mentality that it's all for all, not instead of just, you know, the about me that Louise mentioned. It's moving from that me to we space. And then as we sort of navigate that, and I think that that's kind of part of this, you know, we're working with a lot of this global learning curve, and considering that the vast majority of people are probably not considering these archetypes on the highest level, at least consciously, we have to have this compassion that people might just be in that fear space, which Saturn represents, the fear of like, oh my gosh, what's going on? The world is going crazy. People being afraid of other people being afraid of their neighbors, and then kind of watching how it unfolds with the wisdom of, you know, how we navigate that. And that's what brings us to the highest essence of Aquarius. It's like, oh, I can learn how to love my neighbor. I can learn how to see that, you know, we're all in this together, and that there is this, you know, this massive component of kind of breaking through and creating a system that does work for everybody. And yes, Crystal says, you know, what about Aquarius's traditional ruler being Saturn? Well, of course, that's a big piece of it. It's that outer nature of Saturn. If we think about Capricorn as the inner nature of Saturn, that part that's sort of internally dismantling the structures and the conditioning. And now we've got this massive external shift out in the world. Like, we're witnessing the structures coming down. If we think back to January 12th with the original conjunction between Saturn, Pluto, and how, you know, we're going to be coming back close to those degree points when Saturn retrogrades back to 25 Capricorn, and then we're going to be coming back into Aquarius in December. So there's this, I would say, this back and forth energy of really looking at how the external structures are shifting and what that means for society, and then coming back in to look at ourselves, like, how is this, you know, what is this, how does this connect to the patriarchal conditioning? How does this connect to cultural programming that I've been sort of downloaded with and inundated with in this society? And so we'll kind of have this back and forth play between that. So that's one thing that I think is really important. Another thing is kind of noticing how there's so many different theories out there of what's going on. And I don't want to go too deep into this, but just a couple that I find interesting. Somebody mentioned that this is, and again, there's no data behind this. I'm just sharing it because I find it fascinating with, you know, the Neptune and Pisces, what's in the imaginal realm of the collective right now. That this is a ploy to save the children. right? Noticing that a lot of the children aren't getting sick, that it's, you know, the elderly. That's just interesting. You know, I'm not going to give too much attention to that, but something to consider, like, why is that a theory that's coming up in the collective? There are people that are imagining that, or maybe it's true. I don't know, but for a reason, people are thinking about that cancer component, the children. How can we really tune into that? And on another one that I heard that was fascinating was, you know, is the COVID-19 coronavirus based on a reaction to 5G, which is another potential. Maybe that's true. People of the Rudolf Steiner school persuasion are very adamant about, well, that's how viruses come, because they are a result of toxins, and our bodies respond by creating a virus that seeks to then balance out naturally, et cetera, et cetera. So that's also interesting. Definitely not an expert on those things, but I find nonetheless it's important to actually look at, well, what's coming up in the imaginal realm for people, because that is something that's being integrated for all of us. Yeah. So another thing to think about is that we are all learning new rules, which is Saturn's territory, right? And I think that the more we can have compassion for what it looks like on all of the different levels of consciousness for how we all learn the rules, being, you know, wash your hands all the time, act as though you have it, wear a mask, right? So that you can get used to what the world is going to look like, likely for the next 9 to 18 months. If you consider that Saturn will be retrograding back into Capricorn, I feel like even just that shows that this is, you know, going to prolong the situation, that this is likely not just going to be over by May, June. I mean, I'm also a public school teacher, and they're talking about things like, we're going to go back to school May 4th. I'm like, I really don't think we are. I mean, I don't know if I am, and my daughter's, you know, in school, and I'm like, I'm not sure about that. But it will be fascinating to see how we collectively kind of create new rules, and also realize that it can't just be this one person at the top of this pyramid making the rules for everybody, because that might miss something very important that that person just can't see based on that vantage point. So I feel like there is a lot of opportunity for us to really expand our consciousness, expand our awareness in this learning curve, all of us together, and be able to use that Neptune and Pisces energy towards really visioning and dreaming in a new future, and for the future generations. Wanted to share one photo that my friend drew, and I feel like it is so North Node in Cancer, you know, seeing how the nodes are shifting, seeing how the balance is shifting. We're having this profound awareness that's coming back to the goddess, perhaps. That's one way of looking at it, but also just balance between masculine and feminine, and also really looking at, you know, who are the people that are on the front line really, you know, holding this space. So how can we kind of zoom out of our individual, like what's happening to me experience, and come back to this awareness that we are all in this together, and that all of our roles matter. And maybe we're doing, you know, something like we're doing, we're kind of helping people shift perspective and giving information, but, you know, maybe you're doing something physical, and that's wonderful. Maybe you're doing something for your own family or for your own community. Whatever you're doing is important and it matters. So yeah, that's what I have mostly, unless anybody has any questions.
Yes, how do you feel as a mother?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely been on my mind pretty heavily as to, you know, what kind of choices can I make that are best for my family. And I feel like more than anything, it's this reparenting for me, myself, and realizing like this is a totally different experience than my mother had with me. And so it kind of almost gives me this reset, like maybe I don't need to rely on whatever the old structures were, the old ways of being a parent were, and I just have to respond to the now and be in the present moment and use my intuition. So if anything, I feel like this whole situation is forcing me to be more present and more instinctual, if that makes sense.
Yes, yes, it does. Thank you very much, Nura.
Thank you for having me.
Now we're going to go to Marty Dixon.
sharing my screen here. Do you all see the screen?
Yes.
Okay. So we're good, Linda?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Linda. Thank you, esteemed colleagues. Thank you, viewers. Hopefully, Linda, you can help me keep track of the time here. I like to look at maps, and I might be reiterating some of what the rest of you have said, but I so much appreciate all of you and all of your knowledge and input. So it doesn't hurt to go over the astrology a little bit more. I like to tell my clients that just look at the map, whether you understand it or not, it'll sink in on some level. It's a reflection of who we are down here. And if you don't understand it, just humor me. But the map is really important. Hopefully you can see the map here. Okay, hopefully you can. Let me try something here. Here we go. Okay, so there we go. But anyway, here's our map, and configured right. And anyway, Pluto's in Capricorn, and Pluto in Capricorn is to confront the nature of caretaking and responsibility here down here on Earth, both collectively and individually. Laser pointer, and here's Pluto down here, and hopefully you can all see this. I have pictures covering mine, but hopefully you can all see the map. And Pluto is in Capricorn, and Pluto represents the world's soul. It is specific to the house and that it is in for an event or a person. And this is the house that Pluto is purging. And let's see if I can get this. Bear with me just one moment. I have pictures covering my map here. Let's see here. Okay, that's better. And Pluto is purging right now where I am in the Pacific Northwest, or it was. This is a chart of December 24th, the solar eclipse of last December. And this is what Pluto was doing in the 5th and 6th houses, the stellium, at that time in Ashland. So let's look a little bit back to the solar eclipse of December 24th of 2019 and see where the world soul was and what the world soul was up to. And as you can see very distinctly here, Pluto is heading the stellium in Capricorn. It's followed by Saturn, Ceres, the North Node, Jupiter, the Moon, the Sun, and Mercury, and Pallas Athena. So there's quite a parade, and it's actually being led by Venus in Aquarius. So whatever that means to you, just look at it and let it sink in, and know that we are experiencing the greatest extremes, the greatest highs and lows, and seeking balance through the Pluto polarity point of Cancer, which is the Earth Mother, which is right here. In this case, in this chart, it happens to be the 11th house in Cancer. The North Node in this chart has passed the planetary North Nodes of Saturn, Pluto, and Jupiter, all in Cancer, representing a collective direction or aspiration of some sort of a higher nature. We're all being given the opportunity to grow and move and extend and soar in these times. Even no matter how tragic they are, I don't mean to make light of them. But all of this is retrograde in a chart. So the North Node collectively, as of our last December eclipse, was moving past a lot of established belief systems and conditioned behavior and pattern behavior. So the North Node represents a new evolutionary cycle. It's separating from the planetary south nodes of Jupiter, Pluto, and Saturn. It is separating from the ties of the past, i.e. belief systems, what is essential to life, Pluto, and all of our reality structures. The North Node is applying pressure or approaching the North Node of Uranus retrograde right here. Let's see if I can do this. Bear with me just a moment. Okay. And then currently on today, March 26, 2020, we are right here with Pluto, and Mars has just a day ago exceeded Pluto or gone past Pluto, and Saturn has as well in just the past couple of days. And now we have Jupiter becoming balsamic or culminating to Pluto, along with Pallas Athena and the South Node. And I don't have time to really elaborate on that, but I would just say to anyone that's watching and learning, just pay attention, because it's our consideration of the stars that really feeds us. And it's our inconsideration of the stars that can be likened to the Latin derivative of considere, the Latin derivative of going against the stars, which is not a good idea. It's always good to consider the map and consider the stars, as opposed to against the stars, which is a Latin derivative for the word catastrophe. So we are rewiring our brains. We're moving toward a much higher collective mental vibratory level, Aquarius. And we are shifting our higher minds and our very perceptions of reality and the way that we think. In early May, the North Node is going to shift to Gemini. And that very much so is rewiring our brains and our way of thinking, and accessing the past, Sagittarius, and our intuitive bodies and our animal instincts and the way things used to be in a tribal community. So look at the North Node's relationship to Jupiter's planetary North Node, which was retrograde in December. Right now, as we look at the North Node now, Jupiter's North Node is now direct. We are now approaching Jupiter's North Node, which means, again, in a nutshell, go within, follow your instincts, believe in, watch the animals and nature all around you, follow the signs and symbols of nature that are all around you. Jupiter is conjunct Pluto, and remember that the intention of any planet conjunct Pluto or in stellium with Pluto is to confront Pluto, the nature of our belief systems. And we're now in a 500-year mutation period between the age of Pisces and the age of Aquarius. We are confronting our belief systems big time, on a big level. And I said in a past lecture that it was during the transitional time from the last matriarchy to the current patriarchy, roughly 6500 to 5500 BC, that the patriarchal invention of beliefs began. So we're now in a time of great belief, and whether our beliefs are true or not, we are changing them big time and learning to question them and think for ourselves. Jeffrey said that we would get to a place in time where upon the Earth where imbalance would become so Plutonian intense that we will have no choice but to evolve and change. So hopefully, we all know nature will take care of ourselves, but hopefully we will learn as human beings and not cataclysmically. Because remember, the word catastrophe is a Latin derivative for the word against the stars. At this point in time, the human organism is horribly out of balance. Look at the consequences of our planet based on the doctrine, the false doctrine of the Garden of Eden myth, which Jeffrey talks about in his lectures, how flesh is battling spirit or a female is battling male. That's not true at all. Everything is equal and balanced in natural law. And at this point in time, the human organism is horribly out of balance relative to the totality of nature, and nature is fully conscious. I just want to give a quote from Jeffrey. Just imagine that we're astronauts. We're out in space and we're looking at this nice blue planet. And if we now make our eyes like an eagle, meaning like a telescope, and we now look down at the planet, the human organism is going to appear through our imagined telescope like cancer cells in a body, because it is out of balance. When there's a Q cell present, it tries to isolate itself in order for the whole organism to survive. It is no different for any species that becomes dominant and out of balance. And that's where we are now. And that's a large degree to why this virus has been allowed to proliferate in the way that it is. We are out of balance. Nature will progressively isolate that which is out of balance in order to sustain itself. It is self-regulating. Do you see? From the point of view of nature, this is just another life form which happens to be out of control. So we ourselves need to take back control, and we ourselves need to find our own balance. I want to give a quote from Brian May from the band Queen. I listen to him, I follow him on his social media. And he said something really, really wise. He said, the virus has chosen only to threaten one species on the planet, the species which has caused the most damage to the planet, which has destroyed the environment, destroyed the habitat, habitat, destroyed or enslaved most of its fellow creatures. So it's putting us in check, and there's much to learn from this. We've already seen pollution disappear in some of the cities that are shut down. Let's see here. And then some quotes from Jeffrey. He's talking about the out of balance between flesh and flesh and spirit, so to speak, or the divine feminine and the divine male. And we are now entering into a much more time of balance when we're entering into the new matriarchy. But Jeffrey said that imbalance still permeates our consciousness, gender inequality, the assumption that the human organism is superior to nature. And that reminds me of something that one of my Native American teachers said. He said, there's absolutely nothing wrong with technology. We're in an advanced technological society now. He said it is the misuse of technology that is wrong. So not thinking that we're superior to nature, but in league with nature is how we need to proceed, personally and collectively. And then Jeffrey went on to say that God is an evolving force. One day we will wipe out the psychology of imbalance, superiority and inferiority, and we will learn to simultaneously wipe out the delusion of belief. The point is that we had a planet like that some 25,000 years ago during the time of Atlantis. We lived in harmony and peace, and we can do it again. At this point of time, the human organism is horribly out of balance. Look at the consequences of our planet based on the doctrine. Oh, I already said that. At this point in time, we have a great opportunity to find our balance again and to embrace nature. She is much more fully conscious than we can even conceive of. And I'm going to move on here to, let's see here. Okay, I just want to talk really quickly. I just want to point out Pallas Athena. She is the goddess of creative wisdom, and I'll end on this note. She is one who learns to prepare for peace in times of war, prepare for peace in times of peace. She is a craft master. It's time to perfect our crafts so that we can become the peacemakers, the wayshowers, and the readiers of the world, and teach ourselves and our children. Hone your craft. Build up, encourage, cooperate, and strengthen. Learn to plant, grow, and nurture a garden. This is the wisdom of the divine feminine and the age that we're entering into, so that we will always be ready, no matter what, whether we're in peace or war, we will have prepared and we will be ready. The creative answer to being in isolation is to hone your craft. And are you secluded longer than you expected? Hone your craft again. And I think I just have one more slide I want to go to. I'll just show this in case you want to pause and read it. And then I'll just go to my last slide saying we have a small window now, as many great teachers and humanitarians and conservationists are telling us. It's time to move and grow. Don't be the frog in the well. Move around, grow, change, evolve, do something. Do what you do best to make a difference in the world. Do not stay still. Sometimes you only have a small window to see, and you must look within. Sometimes you have to dig deep for that which lies hidden within your soul. These are those times. The common threads of memory that have come between us. We need to dig for the remembrance of tribal ceremony, and sacred ground. We need to dig deep. Pluto's in Capricorn, to those things of the soul that are born of grief, fear, and loss, that spring perennially like a seed from the human heart, and which need no planting, no translation, no explanation. These are Pluto's lessons in Capricorn of elder wisdom. And I want to give tribute to all those brave souls that have died in honor and gone on before us. And they're in a good place, and we will meet them again. But I want to remember those that are still here to go deep within. The teachers are all around. Listen, you're on sacred ground. Mitakwe Oyasin.
Thank you very much, Marty, Dixon. Cili, you're next.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
How are you?
Great.
Evolution. Evolutionary astrology. Right now, we look at our planets from Mars on out to Pluto, and we see that all the planets that are there, with the exception of Uranus, which is part and parcel of Aquarius in the sign of Taurus. We have Mars in Capricorn, Jupiter in Capricorn, Saturn in Aquarius, Pisces, Neptune in Pisces, and Pluto in Capricorn. These are all our transpersonal planets that relate to the 9th excuse me, the 10th, 11th, and 12th houses. That's when we get to that place of evolving beyond the person, beyond the relation, and start relating to that which is bigger than us, that extends ourselves, that is beyond ourselves, that is also part of ourselves, that is not centered in self. We have this movement of energy from the Pluto-Saturn conjunction that happened, and we know what that means. That's structures. That has governed our principled understandings for an eon of time, an epoch of time, the last 6,000 years. These structures are changing outside of us, but it also is changing within our beingness, within our body. And to pull in what you said earlier, Erin, about Venus, relationship. So here we have Taurus in the placement of where Uranus is. Venus, our personal planet, has come in to connect in that area right now. And we also have our moon there presently also in Taurus. So that Taurian place of the earth, our body, that which is stationary, we are experiencing it now with Venus's journey through that here in our homeland of America, of what is changing inside of ourselves. The uncertainty, the fear, the shift, the dynamic. And what I'd like to propose that we take a look at between this changing of time from a Piscean age into the Aquarian age, the ending of the Kali Yuga time period, moving back towards the Golden Age. It's an epic moment for us to take a look at our earth, our bodies, where Venus is, all of our relationships in connection to that, and what bridges the transpersonal planets from Capricorn, Aquarius, and Pisces into the earth, the body, the belonging of Taurus is Aries. Where is our sun now? It is located in Aries. Where is Eris, the most outer aware planet that we are familiar with beyond Pluto? Where is it right now? It is in square to the Capricorn planets. It is the one that wreaks havoc. Also in Aries, we have Black Moon, Lilith, and Chiron. Talk about the darkness, the pain, the woundings in the sign of Aries, which is the self that we've just now getting beyond the transpersonal, coming into the self, bridging into the earth of who we are. We get a big key of what we're experiencing now in this time of breakdown, fear, chaos, and illumination. We are at an epic time of transcendence, coming into our light bodies, our awareness, our illumination. And how does that happen? Through the darkness. Now, I want to take it a step further. I'm going to read you the definition of evolution. Evolution is defined as the process of growth and development, or the theory that organisms have grown and developed from past organisms. An example of evolution is how cell phones now have changed our time. And where did we come? It's all energy. So I'm going to move back a little further and speak about what is on our hands now. The virus. What is a virus? It's a sub-microscopic infectious agent that replicates only inside the living cells of an organism. We are a living organism. The earth is a living organism. A virus is not from this Earth's atmosphere. It comes from space. It is Aquarian. It is cosmic. It in and of itself is not an organism. It doesn't live within itself. It must have a host. So already we can see a cracking open of the relationship of self, transpersonal, the possibility of opening into greater cosmic relations, the changing of an age, and coming into our bodies. Now, let me say one more thing. While the virus is not inside or infecting a cell, the process of this virus itself only exists in the form as an independent particle. A virus consists of 2 or 3 parts. It's made either of DNA or RNA, long molecules that carry genetic information. It's the protein that coats and protects the gene. And in some viruses, it's enveloped by fat. And that also can be easily washed away with soap and alcohol. So when we say DNA and long molecules, which is a protein chain, DNA is intelligence. That is what we are. That's who we are. And DNA comes in to provide life, intelligence, and growth. And a virus, what does it do? It comes in as a slight interruption in that process. Now, viruses can infect humans. They share similar structures and features and can infect bacteria as well. And what that means that viruses in some way may have a common origin that dates back, what? Several billion years ago. So are we just not part of our cosmic reality? We are made of stardust. We are the stars. So now, as we're going through this process of death and resurrection, we're also coming in contact with parts and pieces of ourselves that maybe we've forgotten. Maybe we're going through a restructuring codes that we, in fact, can come to a greater awareness. Now, the origins of viruses in the evolution of history of life are unclear. Some may have evolved from plasmids, which are pieces of DNA that move between cells, while others may have evolved from bacteria. And that's from insects that took place maybe millions of years ago. In evolution, listen to this, in evolution, viruses are an important means of horizontal gene transfer, which increases genetic diversity in a way that is analogous to sexual reproduction. Viruses are considered by some to be a life form because they carry genetic material, reproduce and evolve through natural selection, although they lack the natural key characteristics that an organism has on its own that is necessary to carry out life. Viruses, in fact, may be responsible for significant episodes of evolutionary change, especially in complex types of organisms. A virus is DNA or RNA, long molecule proteins, and possibly fat around it. That's all a virus is. It's not a living organism. It must have a host to live in. So where do these viruses come from? They come from space. What are we going through? We're going through an awakening of consciousness, a remembering of who we are and where we come from. And the virus might very well be here for us to remember that we are more than just the body. We are greater intelligence. It's here to allow an evolutionary process for us to remember and to evolve through. Evolution is defined as the process of growth and development, or the theory that organisms have grown and developed from past organisms. Evolution is upon us, and we have the great ability to utilize our astrology, the planets, our higher intelligence. The light codes of our DNA and RNA are being tested. What is our truth? What do we believe? We may very well pass on, we may not, but it is a time of evolution, breaking out of the old, growing into and projecting forward into the Aquarian age. We are more than who we think we are. We are light, and we are evolving. May all be safe, well, loved, and cared for, and may we all get through this time. Does anybody have any questions?
I don't see any questions in the Facebook group or in the chat.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Cili. Excellent.
Thank you so much. That was beautiful.
You're welcome.
Yeah, great. Well done. Everybody was
Thank
brilliant.
you.
Absolutely fabulous. I mean, I've learned so much.
We haven't finished.
I'm sorry I didn't say anything very meaningful in the beginning.
Erin, we haven't finished yet.
Oh, okay.
Actually, I thought I would do a segment. And
Yay.
yeah, goody. I'm going to do the last one. And then how about we have Q&A and just general discussion with whoever's left. Be great to hear from some of us.
Whoever's left, you mean?
Yeah, I mean, you know.
I know.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'll mute myself.
So I will just share my screen. Okay. I began my investigation into asteroids Coronis and Asclepius on February 29, the date of the first US COVID-19 death, which was closely followed by Australia's first death. I discovered Coronis when I started to search for phonetic matches for corona, and a quick Google search revealed her connection to health. This led me to going deeper and tracking a few more asteroids. In ancient Greek mythology, the father of Asclepius was Apollo, the god of healing, plague, and disease. The mother of Asclepius was Coronis, and both were associated with healing, health, and natural medicine. Asclepius was taught the art of natural healing by Chiron. Asclepius was the god of medicine and healing with the ability to cure all disease, connected to longevity, resurrection, and immortality. The rod of Asclepius is an emblem associated with the medical profession, consisting of a serpent coiled around a rod. Asclepius was the father of Hygeia and Panacea, all associated with healing, health, and medicine. Here's a quote by Gray Crawford: "Rooted in earth, Asclepius is a healer who emerges in times of crisis and cathartic change, reverent of nature, in balance with masculinity and femininity, and reliant upon ritualistic incubation to find healing cures." Okay, so it's important to firstly remember that astrology does not cause anything to happen, but merely reflects what is happening. So from mid-March to mid-November 2019, Coronis was part of a stellium with Saturn and Pluto. The symptom onset date of the first patient identified was December 1, 2019, with Coronis in Aquarius. The first case was reported on December 8, 2019, when Coronis squared Uranus, with a foreshadowing of contagion. On April 1st, 2020, Coronis will exactly conjunct Neptune, and on April 15th, Coronis will sextile Pluto, the assimilation of new understandings emerging, and on May 1st, Coronis will conjunct Chiron, bridging the physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual bodies. Now, here are the correlations I've been using. Pluto Scorpio, all virus, bacteria, diseases, global death. Uranus Aquarius, contagion, group hysteria, breakthroughs. Saturn Capricorn, death, fear, depression, reflection. Chiron, health, healing, wounding. Pisces Neptune, consciousness, crown chakra, dreams, pineal gland. All fluids in the body, immune system, all toxins, water, and hysteria. And the asteroid numbers for Coronis is 158 and Asclepius 4581. And here is the Coronis discovery chart. The aspects that stand out the most to me, I've marked in red, so we won't be going through all of this, but Coronis and Asclepius are on the angles. This is a bucket chart with a Uranus handle. And Coronius, Asclepius, and Hygeia are conjunct the nodes of Pluto, indicating cataclysmic evolution. There's a fixed grand cross, a kite pattern with Mercury and Asclepius at the apex, and we have a Coronis Hygeia Asclepius T-square with Chiron. This is a critical turning point, pressure, the most wounding and traumatizing moments, the most healing and gifted moments too, birth and death passages. Here is the Asclepius discovery chart, and it contains a tight Coronis-Pluto retrograde conjunction in Scorpio, a mystic rectangle with Chiron, Uranus and the nodes, and a yod made up of Pluto, Neptune, Saturn with Mars at the apex. Cataclysmic evolution, invitation into the emotional body, the finger of fate or fork in the road. Mars in Gemini at the apex requires purposeful focus, inner and outer forces eventually leading to a timely crisis in self-awareness. When this turning point emerges, the course of action taken can completely change the course of life. The change, of course, may appear abrupt, but has actually been building for years. The point directly opposite the Mars apex is extremely sensitive, and transits to this spot should be keenly observed. Here is the first case reported chart for December 8, 2019. Neptune is at 15 degrees, said to be the most intense point of the cycle, the center of chaos. Asclepius is conjunct Coronis, and they're working together in Aquarius. Asclepius and Coronis are exactly square Uranus, a critical turning point, and Asclepius is widely conjunct Pluto, a new evolutionary intent and purpose, and Chiron squares the nodes. Now, there's a lot going on here. We have the Coronis discovery chart and the coronavirus first reported of 8 December. I won't go through it all, but I will just point out that the nodes square the nodes. So we're picking up from the issues that we had left off. So this, has originated in the past, and we're just taking off again. And transiting Chiron is squaring the transiting nodes. And transiting Coronis is conjunct transiting Asclepius. At today's date, Chiron continues to square the nodes. Chiron is conjunct Coronis discovery north node. I find that one pretty insightful. And here we have the Saturn-Pluto new phase conjunction chart, with what I noticed was that the moon was in Leo and it was opposite Coronis, indicating the Pluto-Leo generation and those above 65 at risk or radical healing. Here we have Wuhan on the geodetic world map. Wuhan in the Cancer geodetic zone of the cardinal Grand Cross, conjunct the north nodes of Pluto, Saturn, and Jupiter. And my last chart is the Saturn in Aquarius first ingress chart of May 22nd, Asclepius, son of Coronis, at 5 degrees Gemini. In this pattern signifies a massive collaboration, mobilization of amazing, conscientious, and highly skilled physicians, medical practitioners, scientists, and healers working behind the scenes to make a positive difference, to find solutions and develop drugs, antibodies, and vaccines for COVID-19. Both Asclepius and Coronis are angular, signifying great influence and power. The themes are home, family, innovation, collaboration, healing, collection of information, discipline, depression, fear, reflection, Saturn, and the past, security, old habits, South Node Capricorn. Now, this is interesting. This chart pattern is made up of 6 semi-squares, and it's a bowl pattern. A bowl holds things and has something to offer. And Chiron and Black Moon Lilith are at the midpoint of the bowl, which indicates birth, a birth and death passage. And opposite the bowl is Libra in the empty leg, which is our social distancing. And it's also the point of the supergalactic center. Now, Coronis conjuncts Neptune on April 1st with new seed planting and new purpose. and Coronis will sextile Pluto on April 15, with new understandings emerging. Lastly, please keep your immune system strong by using herbs, vitamins, minerals, acupuncture, homeopathy, naturopathy, exercise, and meditation. And we will have part 2 of this panel discussion on April 2nd at 4:30 p.m. Pacific. So now we're reaching the end of our panel discussion on COVID-19, and we're just going to open up to general discussion and Q&A, and perhaps Erin, you might like to kick it off.
Thank you. Sorry, I was muted, as I probably should have been. But this has just been a marathon of some information I had absolutely no idea about. And I love the fact that they've included so many different bodies, that verify and validate the situation that we're in. Because, as I said when we started off, the planets don't make us do anything, but they do reflect what we're up to. And, when we had that Saturn-Pluto conjunction, and now, with it exactly conjunct the sun, which illuminates and shines everything, that it was the trigger to this sleeping disease. It's been lying dormant for quite some time. It's not just suddenly appeared out of nowhere. And so what we're looking at is all of the possibilities of how we might be able to look at it and experience it and be with it, and also to accept the fact that it is happening, but also to behave in ways which would give us much more power to overcome and to resist the invasion of the disease into our own bodies. I mean, I'm going to refer back to what I said in the beginning, is that on March, it was on the 13th, 14th of January, where I knew that fate had come and struck and was going to trigger something that was really phenomenal, and it was already starting to become newsworthy. But, again, the planets verified to me, the planetary ray verified to me that this was really deadly serious. And then by the time we get to March the 8th, which is when it was finally named coronavirus, that was when we had the sun shining with Neptune, and at exactly the same time, a Venus-Uranus conjunction at 8 Taurus. So we were really in a place where we had to change we have to look at our value system, Venus, because Venus is a dual goddess. She's not only Taurian, which has to do with primal and sensual, and our value systems, our self-worth, our sense of security, our sense of place, and it's Venus Pandemos, okay? So she's of the people. And then there's the other Venus, the higher-minded Venus, according to the Socratic laws, where we have the socialization process and relationships. It's very key to Venus in Libra, the Venus Libra and Venus, the 7th house Venus, as a mirror of ourselves, because we attract that which is us, only it's mirrored back to us. And I think that's what we're looking at is, not necessarily you, me, and I individually, but certainly collectively, I have to accept some responsibility because I am present, I'm human, I'm part of the whole situation. I'm also in the age bracket where it could become something deadly serious. And I think that, what I've learned from various, this has been hours. It's not, we started at 5, it's now 8:35 p.m. That's 3.5 hours of, really thoughtful information that I'm absolutely aghast, at my collegial intelligence. It really is quite something. And I didn't know where Corona was, in in the sky. I had no idea it was in Aquarius. I mean, I had no idea that it was conjunct Neptune, and that in May that was going to be conjunct Pluto. And I had no idea about a lot of things. So, I mean, what I've learned, I think, is far more important than what I might have to say. When we get together again, I will have assembled something to say. But I think right now, when I looked ahead, as people have done, to when Jupiter comes to conjunct Pluto at 24 Capricorn, I really think that's going to be the blowout. That's going to be the peak point, the high point of the virus. And I think I said in the beginning, maybe I didn't, but I have to say that knowing scientists, they're having a ball. I mean, they're not happy about the world situation, but they are in heaven, virus heaven, because they're working. This is their job. This is what they do. And so we can say, okay, thank you very much to science and to the scientists who are, working night and day, trying to figure out what to do, what's going on, how we can get some kind of panacea, if not an actual cure. It sounds to me like what we've got here is something that's lurks always in the system, waiting for an event or a signature to bring it to the surface. And so, the coronavirus is important, and seems, I didn't realize that it was actually named in consonance with a body, a heavenly body, Coronis in Aquarius now. made some notes. And that in April it'll conjunct Neptune, and in May it'll conjunct Pluto, and then it'll be conjunct Chiron. I don't think it's going to be over very soon. And I think that these characters in the laboratory are just going to be sleepless night and day, working away to try and figure this out. And what it's done to humanity is two things. One, split it absolutely down the middle. But it's also brought in, as we mentioned, the neighborly way. I mean, I drove out to pick something up at a shop just before the meeting here. And I waved at people going for walks. Everybody's going for walks, singular walks. I mean, it is changing consciousness one by one, person by person, event by event. And everybody is, I think, has become united under this aegis of death as it threatens us. And so I'm just absolutely thrilled with the fact that we have so many astrologers who can be so lucid and to really express what we're feeling and what's going on. And, I thought, well, there's my little contribution of Saturn and Pluto and the Sun, Neptune, Venus, Uranus. But, as I mentioned, the cognates for Venus are not all pleasant. I mean, she's not just the goddess of love. She's also the goddess of venereal diseases and various other incurable things that they've had to find ways of curing. So I think that what I'm seeing is that the planets are sort of telling me that a crisis has arrived of such magnitude that it's global, that we are going to have to rise to the highest level of A, our intelligence, and B, our spirituality, or A, spirituality, and B, intelligence, however you want to put it in a hierarchy. But that's what it's doing. I mean, we're questioning ourselves because, at first I was like literally couch-ridden by the news, literally, by hearing it, because I don't watch on television. I just have, Netflix and that kind of thing. So I didn't get any news on this. I only had the astrological and some information that came through, and that was what I was looking at. And when I looked at it, I thought, this is going to be, global. It's going to take a long time. It may even run on for 18 months. But I kind of think that it will run its course. And of course, it'll sweep some people with it. But I do believe that it will run its course. It will be yet again another thing that we look back on, like 1931, like 1947, when I was born, Saturn-Pluto conjunction. So I'm kind of taking this personally. I'm saying, well, listen, Saturn, Pluto, and I've got it in the 9th house, so it's my philosophy. You know, don't attack my philosophy. Don't take it away. Don't take my life. Don't take my children. You know, I mean, some of you have wee little children, and mine are all over 20 now. And I'm just, you know, absolutely moved by the fact that, you know, Linda, you all of a sudden just decided to, let's have a talk, let's have a discussion. And it's been a great discussion, and I'm pleased to hear that it's going to go on again. So I'll be very happy to, you know, monitor and be involved in the next one as well, and our next discussion. But
yes, please. I
just have to thank you all for all the work you did and all the information that I had no idea about. I mean, it's wonderful. Thank you.
In fact, I think we should have ongoing panel discussions on a regular basis, like maybe every week. Why not?
I think while we're working through this, because it's actually very depressing. You know, I can be as cheerful and appear the way I appear, but the fact is that, you know, I was born with a Saturn Pluto conjunction. I know what death is. I know what it's like. I've been surrounded by it with my life. I've almost died a couple of times. I know exactly what this is about. I know about my father was a doctor. And, you know, I was disinherited because I didn't become a doctor. I became an astrologer. What a fool. You know, that was the attitude. But to me, I think that my astrology is very healing. It heals me. It's soothing other people to reassure them that they exist and that they're really real and that what they're feeling is actually valid. So I just want to thank you again, you know, for doing this and say good evening. In my case, I don't know about where you are, but in my case, good evening and good luck.
Thank you, Erin.
You're welcome.
Would you all please thank Erin Sutherland?
Thank you.
Thank you, Erin.
Erin, that was beautiful.
Thank you so much.
Erin.
Thank you, Erin.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ma'am.
See you next time.
So we haven't ended just yet. I'm just going to call for any normal statements by our...
Oh, no. What a darling thing you brought.
What is it?
It's a baby. It's a little wee baby.
Say hello to my astrologer friends.
Hello, darling. Are you going to grow up to be a doctor or an astrologer? Will your father disinherit you if you become a doctor?
No.
Hello.
Hello,
Hello, beautiful. We love you.
Sorry, I had no idea you had a little chub like that. It's so
Oh yeah,
good.
that's why I'm on video the whole time. That's why my image is on and not my face the whole time.
Oh, because of the little chub. It's
Well,
a
I'm just doing
thing. I love babies.
Oh, congratulations.
They're so pure. Look at how pure it is.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with it.
Oh.
What's the name?
Oh, yes. Hello.
This is a baby.
All clucky.
You know you're seeing my silly side, so whatever. We're having fun. Listen, little baby, if you really realize who we are when you grow up, you're going to go, oh my God, my father was the...
Yeah, Jenny, that's the December 23rd daughter that I was talking about.
Oh, I see. What a chart.
Yeah, she was just born before the eclipse.
Oh, I see. Okay.
We were talking about you. We weren't even...
You've got your hands full, you and your wife, the mother.
I think she knows we were talking about her too, because her eyes got real big, like, what?
Yeah.
Why are y'all talking about me?
Oh, yeah, no. And as they get a little bit older, they become more and more in need of attention, so it's more interesting. Well, thank you so much, everybody. It's just been really lovely.
Thank you.
Yes.
Ari.
So you'll let us know when the next one you're going to...
April the 2nd at 4:30 p.m. Pacific.
Oh, I wrote it down. Jeez.
Yeah.
My brain is just gone.
I'll be in touch with you. Now, before we go, do we have anyone else wishing to say a few final words?
I just wanted to say, I should have maybe said it first about the really interesting, because what you said too, the south node of Chiron, which is at 3 degrees Taurus. So the south node of, so in other words, Uranus was conjunct the south node of Chiron at the Saturn-Pluto conjunction. And so it's actually being squared by Saturn and Mars, I think, next week. And
Michaela, could you repeat that? Because it sounds really important.
Okay.
Just slowly.
Okay, sorry. The south node of Chiron is 3 degrees Taurus, which means obviously the Uranus was conjuncted at the Saturn-Pluto conjunction. And it's obviously going to be squared by Mars and Saturn next week, and also still by Uranus. So that really adds up to what you were saying too about the asteroids. Cronus, is it? Cronus, yeah.
Yes.
Because they were in other words, they were square. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Thank you, Michaela. That's excellent. Ari, would you like to speak?
Yeah, I have to admit, I'm so glad I didn't do this, but before I even knew that Cronus existed, I had this devious plan to start off my little talk with the transits of asteroid COVID-19 was at 20 degrees Aries when the coronavirus was discovered. I was just gonna make a joke because COVID-19 totally sounds like it can be an asteroid, but the impulse for that wasn't there when I began talking, so I let it go, and then I'm glad because apparently it actually exists.
So actually, COVID does not exist as an asteroid because I looked. There's Covington, there's Coventry, there's like, you know, but none of them were really suitable to use. But Coronis phonetically matches Corona.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I'm glad you shared that.
Oh,
yeah.
Isn't she gorgeous?
Sheila, do you have anything to share with us?
My south node is conjunct Jupiter in Capricorn.
What else?
Oh, I'm a Sag rising, and my ascendant is conjunct my daddy's south node, so that definitely means we have a lot of karma to work out in this lifetime.
Do you have any thoughts on what's happening in the world right now?
Well, my breast milk has a lot of immunities in it.
So should we all drink breast milk? Is that what you're saying?
It's delicious.
Okay.
If you can find yourself a source of breast milk, it might be just as hard as finding toilet paper.
That's really wise. Thank you.
Okay, it's good to see you here, Robin. Anything you'd like to share?
No, I'm just really enjoyed all the presentations. It was absolutely fabulous.
Thank you, Robin. Okay, who have we missed? How about Marty? How about we end off with something from Marty?
Hello. I'd just like to reiterate that Uranus is indeed square to Saturn, as so many of you have pointed out. And when I look at the ephemeris, it's actually going to be in and out of square to Saturn until March of 2023. And that's really a wake-up call. It's a shot across the bow. We had a great time to wake up after 9/11. I remember hearing stories of foreign ships that when they entered U.S. territorial waters, they would lower their flag in respect to our disaster. And we had a great chance to come to the forefront, find leadership, find cooperation, find direction, but we lost it. The war in Iraq followed, which was a tragedy, more useless death. Now we have a great window. We have a great opening to show the world that what we are made of. If we don't agree with our leaders, we have a great opportunity now to rise up, Uranus in Taurus and take our own power, take our own direction, sustain ourselves, find new ways, innovative, creative ways to survive and survive together and from the heart. This is a tremendous opportunity. And with Venus mirroring down on us and beaming at us and helping us to be resourceful and work together, we can do it. We can find the good medicine in fearful times that comes from great loss and death. And we can find new growth in our hearts and lead the expansion and be the leaders that we're meant to be if we just do our work and stick together and find the good medicine within, which is a miracle to all of this tragedy.
Beautiful, Marty. Thank you so much. And finally, I would just like to thank Erin Sullivan for being present in our panel discussions, and also my admins who, well, they're not really mine, but they're ours, right? So Olive on Facebook, our Facebook Live monitor, and Wanda Michelle, who was taking questions from the audience, and Robin, and very helpful also are Sue and Dawn and Sarah and so many others. So I just wanted to mention you. And so I'm really looking forward to next week. We're going to have Erin and Kim Marie and a few more other speakers. And I think we should do this regularly. What do you think?
Yes.
Good, good. All right. Bye, everyone. I'm
Yes.
leaving you all to say goodbye, and we'll catch you next time.
Thank you,
Goodbye.
everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Bye,
Much,
everybody. Bye.
much love.
Bye.
Kiss, kiss.
Bye.
Don't touch your face. All right. Good night.